Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to this regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. I'd like to open the meeting at 7:30. May we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Carpenter.
Here.
Mr. Fitzer.
Here.
Mr. Hara.
Here.
Mr. Casera.
Here.
Mr. Newshine. Ms. Redmond.
Here.
Mr. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Solomon.
Here.
Mr. Tinley.
Here.
Thank you. Agenda item number 4 is approval of tonight's agenda. Does everyone approve tonight's agenda, or do they want to modify anything or change anything? Are we all happy with it? Then I'll approve it as it stands. And then we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is approval of the regular meeting minutes from March 25, 2025. It'll be our last meeting.
I will make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from March 25th, 2025.
Support.
Any problems, changes? None. May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Fitzer.
Yes.
Mr. Hara.
Yes.
Mr. Casera.
Yes.
Mr. Newshine, not here. Ms. Redmond.
Yes.
Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Mr. Solomon.
Yes.
Mr. Tinley.
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6 is public discussion. Is there anyone from the public wishing to opine tonight? Seeing none, I will then, excuse me, I will close public discussion, and we'll move on to agenda item number 7, which is consideration of the site plan amendment for 76 West 14 Mile Road, which is Vigilante Kitchen. And Mr. Tangieri can start us out through this.
So 76 West 14 Mile Road used to be home to part of Limbs, and that and the space next to it have been renovated over the last several years based on a previous site plan. So there's one restaurant going into as they're facing it from 14 Mile, the left side, and then this restaurant wants to go into the right side. So it's a fairly simple plan overall. There's some addition work going on in the back. The front isn't going to be modified except for one awning. And then there is a proposed mural on the sidewall. It's a 3,150 square foot site. And it's all commercial or city center zoning in the area. That awning that I was talking about on the front of the building, it's a flat metal awning proposed on the front facade, and that meets the standards of 311B5, which is the relevant part of the zoning ordinance. On the back of the site, they're proposing two elements. One, there's a 10 by 10 foot walk-in cooler that would be added to the rear of the building. Not too dissimilar from what you see at the back of the former Clausen Grill over at on the southeast quadrant of downtown. Cooler is 15.5 feet from the rear property line, so it therefore meets the required 10-foot rear setback from that alley. There is also a proposed canopy over the prep area next to the cooler. That also goes back 10 feet off the building. They're proposing to add that exterior prep area with a smoker oven, and I know that you're going to have questions about the smoker oven. The smoker oven is proposed to be vented above the building roof line. The applicant's prepared to discuss the use profile of this oven and its emissions. We have had some discussions between Nick, myself, and the applicant about that. The exterior prep area is going to be fully screened with an aluminum slat system that limits visibility into the space while also allowing airflow. We did want confirmation of the color. It's shown in an earth tone on the site plan, but the example on the spec sheet is red. I think the earth tone is what was intended, but I just wanted to make sure that we had confirmation of that. The plans do show a rooftop screen for the rooftop equipment that matches the screen for the exterior prep area. Again, color confirmed. And then we have the mural. So the proposed mural is shown in the letter there. It's located on the east-facing wall along the neighboring property line and would be visible to westbound traffic on 14 Mile. You'll be able to see it depending on where you are in the public parking lot behind as well, because that building next door is kind of small and leaves a lot of room to view it. They have limited the commercial message, which is the Vigilante logo, to less than 25% of the total mural area. One of our standards for mural review is that the mural complements the building's colors and aesthetics. The PC, of course, can discuss that. The colors are primarily neutral, and there's kind of like an accent color that runs through the whole thing. And then the third standard that the PC has to consider is the mural is considered to be a public benefit, i.e. art, which could not be achieved using the standard wall signage requirements. So if you have any questions for me or anything you'd like to discuss, let's do it. And if not, we can throw to the applicant.
The permit use of a mural in town, is that our responsibility in planning?
It is, yes.
It doesn't fall under the sign ordinance?
It's well, it is part of the sign ordinance, but it is your decision as a planning commission.
It's ours, okay, yeah, because we talked about that before, 'cause we've got a couple murals going around town. And I'm just leery that the 9 of us are the artists that decide what we like and what we don't like. So I guess it has to stop someplace, so I guess it's on our plate. We're gonna have to figure out if we like it or not.
I have a question on that, because wasn't the DDA looking to build a mural program? And how would that impact
they
our
were.
decisions and
Y-
responsibilities?
Yes, to date, nothing concrete has come of that.
Okay.
Obviously, there's been some leadership change there as well, so I'm not real sure what the status is.
Okay.
But yes, there was a push to create a mural program.
But I
at
don't
the
believe
DNA.
they devised any standards or created
No.
anything at this point.
No, not at this point. There's nothing concrete or on paper that I'm aware of.
Okay. Just curious. Thank you.
So I remember when we had the Guinness one in front of us, and we talked about, and I did send Nick an email. I don't know if he's out of office or.
He's out this week, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Had I known that, I would have messaged you. We talked at that time about the copyright, because the Guinness had a copyright. So I was curious, because this seems to be, to me, art is original, and it's not necessarily something that takes components of copyrighted, already produced artwork. I don't know if, so I was wondering, is there anything that we need to consider with that component?
Well, Nick and I anticipated this question. We did actually ask the city attorney what his opinion was on that. And from the city's perspective, the use of trademarked or copyrighted material is at the risk of the owner. So there's no liability from the city's standpoint, but you can discuss that with the owner as to whether or not that, I guess, trademarked material is something that they're attached to as a component of the
Yeah,
mural.
I would assume the liability would be theirs, not the
It
city's.
is, yes,
If you painted
absolutely.
the
If a
Coca-Cola
Disney
logo on the
executive
side of the
drove by
building,
and got mad.
If Coke didn't like it, it's,
Well, and in our definition of, I mean, I guess you can replicate a trademark and consider it art. I just, to me, when I thought of the idea of murals, it was more of like something that is an original art production, kind of like stand out our own, thoughts and artwork. But, and also, I saw it was pink, which seems to me that it doesn't necessarily look the same as the red. And maybe they're not doing the red, and I'm not sure how.
I don't
those
think they're doing
colors-
the red, but I guess we'll let them confirm
Okay.
that.
And then for Was there outdoor seating? These are just some of the questions I had. Was there any proposed, I didn't see it in there?
No.
Okay. Was the fire department able to go, like, look over this site plan and opine on, you know, the smoking with, you know, in the back and the material of the canopy? I know that that was something, although this is aluminum, in the past they talked about having it be fireproof material and those standards. Was that something that we were able to get their opinion on?
I haven't received a communication from the fire department. I know it was shared with them from the building and planning department, but I have not seen a communication from them.
Okay.
They will certainly have to inspect it and approve of the materials and things, and the health department also will. That's a county function, but those are two agency approvals that they're definitely going to need.
Okay. Other one was, I saw something in the site plan about linen storage.
Yes, that's part of that outdoor area. There's a little unit in there that is proposed to hold. I don't know exactly what the nature of the linens is, but it is proposed to hold some of their supplies. It's in that screened area along with the other prep space.
Okay. And how about trash? What's the trash like there on that site?
Well, there's a public shared dumpster in the parking lot to the north. It's kind of tucked away in that back corner, and that's what those businesses are all using.
Because what abuts their property line is a parking lot, right? If
That's
you look
right.
at the aerial. So
Yep.
it's back in that?
Yeah, it's back up in the northwest corner by there's like an 8-foot wall back there. The dumpster is up back there. So
Okay.
there's a shared public dumpster that these businesses all use together.
Do we know if, who maintains that dumpster? Do you know, Joe?
Oh, I believe it is a collaboration between the DDA and the city, the DPW. I think the DPW has ultimate responsibility for the maintenance of those dumpster enclosures that are in the public lots. There's 3 of them, well, 4 of them actually. Each quadrant has one. But ultimately, the responsibility lies with the city.
Mojave uses that dumpster now, don't they?
That's correct, yeah.
so-
Mojave, the little bar behind them, the car dealer, the space next to this one
And now we're
also
gonna add 2
uses
more
it.
restaurants to the same dumpster, so that.
Yeah, yeah,
look at that pretty
the
closely, make sure that thing's empty.
the
Oh, yeah.
frequency of removal, yeah, is definitely going to be.
Well, and I was going to ask if it was up to standards. I guess that's something I'd have to take up with the city, though. I was wondering if it was fully enclosed. I don't recall.
Yeah, ultimately, yeah, it is the city's responsibility. We have differing conditions at the 4 different dumpsters that we have in the public lots. One is completely unenclosed.
Yeah.
And then one is enclosed basically to the standards of our ordinance, or 2 of them are, rather. This one is kind of in the middle, I guess.
Okay. So are these considered like accessory uses then? Or are they going to be affixed to the building?
It's all part of the principal use, which is a restaurant, and they are fully affixed to the building, yeah. So this is added on to the building.
Okay.
Any other questions for Joe?
I'd like to hear more about the smoker, but I think the applicant needs
Yeah,
to talk about that.
Yes, should be
Yeah,
prepared to
and
speak about that, yes.
The only other question I had was about, I know this will probably be addressed as well through the, I don't know, the restaurant, whoever comes and does their inspections.
Yeah,
But,
the health
you know, I
department.
know we talked in the past about food prep area, you know, running water, the type of things that they might need and have back there. Is that something, they're gonna have plumbing back there and have like a sink? Is that something, I really think we should have an ordinance if we're gonna be prepping food and cooking it outside, something to help.
I didn't
guide
see
people?
anything about a sink back there. There was no indication of that on the site plan. I don't know exactly what they're doing aside from putting food in that smoker oven. But of course, they're here and can answer that question.
Cool.
Would the applicant like to answer some questions for us?
Hello, everyone. My name is Raina. This is May. We're from Elevate Designs. This is Aaron and his wife, Heaven. He is the chef and one of the owners of Vigilante Restaurant. Just to clarify a few things before he can talk about the smoker. There will be no prep area other than the smoker outside, which will be screened. It's just going to be the smoker to prep a few things. Aaron will be talking more about that. In terms of the linen storage that you asked about, it's just going to be a shed type kind of thing, just to store some dirty uniforms and towels that can be picked up later on. It's nothing really major, and we're just adding that as an optional because we're very tight on the spacing on the inside. In terms of the screening, so we are proposing the screening of the smoker to be matching the same color of the current aluminum on the building to be black, and then the one on the rooftop for the rooftop unit to be a grayish, just like a blend-in color with the roof so it doesn't stand out.
The red one on the
Yeah.
spec sheet, that was only a manufacturer's example, so we weren't going with the red
Not
one.
using
Yeah,
any
we're
reds.
using that color.
We want to complement the exterior of the window frames
Yep.
and even for the roof to have it blend in with the materials and not to have it like a contrast from the street.
Right.
And
And
in-
also for the
In
mural.
terms of the mural, yes, as Joe has mentioned, it's going to be black and white and just one color contrast, which is going to be pink, and this is going to be the same theme on the inside of the restaurant. This is going to be the theme and the main brand color of the restaurant. You were asking about the artist before, so we are working with a muralist that is going to finalize the design of the mural. It's not currently finalized yet, but it is going to be the same concept, just maybe like a few characters that are going to change with the same design concept and same colors mainly. So, yeah, if you have any more questions for us, we can answer them. Otherwise, Aaron can talk more about the smoker. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Aaron Kozad, chef and one of the partners in Vigilante Kitchen. This is my wife, Heaven. She's going to be running the front while I run the back. So the mural, just to address.
Is this your first business, or do you have another business someplace else?
I'm not owner of any other business.
Is there only one Vigilante?
Yes, there was a Vigilante Kitchen
thought-
in Detroit.
I thought there was another one someplace.
Yeah, we had about almost a year run. We found that area wasn't really the right fit for the brand. So we did open in Detroit for about almost a year last year.
So that's gone, so this is going to be a
That's gone. We're
standalone, one-of-a-kind.
moving up
Okay.
here. And I think it's much more suited for Clausen.
Okay. Thank you.
So just to touch on the mural, as we started talking about it with artists, it has come up, this idea of copyright infringement. So it might be something where we pivot more to a service industry workers presented as superheroes sort of thing, where we would have original characters. The mission of the brand, just to touch on it, is that we help people in the industry who are suffering from addiction in order to kind of get their life on track, train, and move in a better direction. So this concept of, finding the inner superhero of the people that we work with, along with the concept of sort of doing something in an industry that isn't really talked about or seen, kind of like taking it under our own hands, is sort of that vigilante ideal. And the more I think about it, like representing the staff as superheroes, I think is actually a better idea. Also, it avoids Mickey Mouse coming after us for any other
You never
characters,
know. You might get really big and they might want a piece of that pie.
I've heard about the mouse.
Yeah.
The smoker is, I did talk pretty extensively with Nick and about the smoker on the phone, and effectively, our smoker is much different than the one that has been having issues in the city. We have a Southern Pride rotisserie oven. It's a closed unit. It really only uses wood for flavor. So it's heated through a gas jet. You put the green hickory into the gas jet, so it's a light white smoke. Green hickory burns a lot less than like a cured wood, like a firewood. We might only use like 1 or 2 logs in a cook process. So that's going to be something that's not going to really cause a lot of smoke. Additionally, our cook processes are like 2 to 4 hours. So it's not like something where we're smoking for like 14 hours overnight, a lot of things that you would see with like barbecue. Also, additionally, I believe code on this smoker is that you take the chimney up above the roof line, just in case any little embers might come out, it wouldn't land on anything. So that's going to also bring that smoke out of the public's sort of senses. The prep area, as we've discussed, it's not really, that's almost like a little bit of a misnomer. Really, all we do is prep the food inside. We bring it out, put it in the oven, remove it from the oven, bring it into the cooler. And there are health department codes for that. It's basically, you have to keep everything covered, make sure nothing can fall in it. But there shouldn't be any actual like work being done outside.
Because then I thought I read that you need like a sink if you're
You would
actually going to
definitely.
be handling food and,
Yeah, you would need sink, sanitizer, yeah.
but you guys don't need all that.
No, because
Yeah.
it's just kind of a load, cook, unload process. So we prep everything in the kitchen.
I'm concerned about the smoke, obviously, because you know I have a problem with smoking in town here.
Yes.
That's a different thing. That's an outside smoker.
I did have a chance to see that smoker, which is more of a barrel type smoker, where I believe the chimney's about this high.
Yep.
So I could see how that's kind of billowing out and causing an
Yeah,
issue.
with yours plumbed through the roof.
Through the
and
roof.
10 feet above the roof line at that.
Yeah.
It's
I
10
would-
feet above the roof?
I think it's
Above
2
the-
feet above the roof
Oh,
line.
okay.
Above the peak.
Okay.
It has to be
Above the peak of the
level.
roof, yeah.
I'm hoping that'll take care of itself. I know that there was a problem. You're right next door to the car dealership there.
Yes.
And they had a problem, I think, 2 years ago with Mojave. I'm not sure what they were cooking, but they were complaining that some of the smoke was coming over and it was contaminating their cars in the parking lot. And
Oh.
somehow they worked it out. I don't know. I let them deal
Maybe
with
they're
it
grilling
themselves.
outside.
They figured it out. So smoke is a problem.
Okay. Well, we also did discuss if the city needed to impart some rules about like when we smoke, if it was a window each day, that's something that we could accommodate as
Right,
well.
we've done that to the other.
Well, what are your hours of operation in general? You guys probably you're not cooking at midnight or
No.
like, so you guys have like standard hours?
Yeah, we're gonna be open about 10 a.m. to about 10 p.m.
Okay.
Every day, but we start prepping at maybe 6, 7 a.m. So if there was
Okay.
like a 6 to 10 window that we needed to smoke in, we could accommodate that. We really use smoke as like a flavor agent. We don't really cook with it much.
So the closest residential is on Broadacre, right? We got 11 homes north,
Yeah,
and they're pretty far away.
Yeah,
I can tell you how far they are.
Yeah.
Give me a moment.
across the parking lot depths.
Yeah.
While he looks that up, do you know how often will your linen service be picked up?
It's
there-
weekly.
Weekly, okay.
And it's, they provide an enclosed steel box that we then drop everything into to keep like, things like flies down and things like that.
Well, and I mean, every city will have a rat issue, right?
Right.
So that would be my concern about outdoor storage of things that might be attractive to them, but it seems, so it's completely enclosed, so.
Yeah, it's provided by the linen company. It's basically like a big steel locker with just a swing door on it, and everything's bagged before it goes in.
Oh, okay,
So it's not like a lot of loose stuff.
okay.
And I think if we needed to, like if it gets full, they would have to come get it, right? It's not something where it's ever going to be outside that box.
Okay, cool.
Nearest residential property line is 112 feet. Nearest residential home is 215.
250, okay. Yeah, it doesn't sound like we can even compare them so
Yep.
much. Although, smoke is relative. We found out, right?
The hard way.
Yeah.
A
So
nice
we try to
brisk wind
avoid it.
from the south and those people over at Broadacre,
Yeah, but that sounds like we've got a good, I feel much more comfortable here. My only question that I forgot to ask maybe for Joe was, do we have safe access and enough access for fire trucks to get back there
Yes.
with the smoker being back there?
Yeah, there's a public alley right behind the building, and fire engines can get right back there.
They can, okay, cool.
Is there any filtration or anything on that, on the stack for that smoker? I'm just curious.
There isn't. It's really just a straight pipe. It's insulated. It's got like a steel core, and then it's got a air insulation
Whole pipe.
and a cap.
Okay.
And you do have to have it like cleaned. But, I mean, so I don't know if you're familiar with like Union Wood Shop. Union Joints was the group that I did before. So I've done a bunch of restaurants. I just wasn't the owner. But we had a similar setup. Right behind the restaurant, we had a little shanty built around the smoker, and we built it up off the peak. And we never really had an issue. I think just because it's so far removed, you know.
Yeah,
And that
being
was
up
actually
high-
smoking
Being up
like-
high is good.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I was
you
just
gonna be-
curious if you had filtration on there as well, because there can be, at the top of the stack, you know, to kind of dissipate additionally some of the smoke. Sometimes there's a filter that's inserted in there. I didn't know whether this had it or not.
We could look into whether they have that for it. I think also the function of the height is like by the time everything goes up there, it's not on fire anymore. I think that's
Yeah.
also a big reason they do it.
Yeah, smoking is a concern. In your case, I don't think it's going to be as bad because you're not smoking constantly with wood.
Right. Yeah, we have a few things that are like seasoned. You know, like we have a ribeye that we take the
Right.
whole subprimal and just give it like a 2-hour low smoke to flavor it, but it's completely raw
Yeah.
when it comes
I'm
out.
optimistic that you're not going to put out as much smoke as the other
We will. Yeah, we will.
businesses. I have no problems with anything else on there, aside from the mural. I don't think that we should approve a mural at this point. Keep it on your plan, but I'd like to see an actual finished drawing of what you plan on putting on there before it gets painted on,
Understood. Yeah, that makes sense.
because we've had that done in the past. Here, approve our mural, it's already been painted, you know. No, I'd like to see it before it's painted, before it's finished.
Yeah, and I think we wanted to make sure that we got in with the agenda, so we had thought, at least let's present a representation of it, but I do understand if you want to see the final
Yeah, I
product.
don't see any problem with it. I don't-
I would agree with you. I would like to be able to see it, and some of it, I would like to make sure it doesn't have like I guess these have just the knives for kitchen, but I don't know if they're gonna have like any type of weapons or anything like that. Just to, I don't know.
The
just
one
wanna
that's a
be agree with-
samurai sword guy,
Yeah, but it doesn't look like he has a samurai.
He has
I
a
don't know.
saute pan.
Were you planning on putting any type of weapons on that? It just seems like it could be a little much.
So the joke of this mural is that there's like Batman, right, who's this like very masculine, intense character, but he has a Hello Kitty apron on and a pink spatula. So if anything, we're trying to soften. The name Vigilante can come across a little forceful,
Abrasive.
so I'm trying to soften the brand a lot. Additionally, have a little fun with it. But if it were to shift towards kitchen workers, it would be like a cocktail shaker. So that if you look, I know it's hard to see on there, but in pink is cooking implements. So
Right.
Batman has a spatula, Spider-Man has tongs, the samurai guy has a little saute pan.
They could be used as a deadly weapon, I'm sure. It's okay, but
Anything in
they're
a
not
kitchen.
offensive. Right.
Yeah.
Spatula will get
But
you.
I'm thinking like, you know, a dishwasher with his like towel and plate,
Yeah.
right? But done in a way that it's just going to take a little bit more work to get these final characters. But I'm happy to, obviously we have to do it to get it.
Well, and I'm excited to see it. I think it'll
Yeah.
be cool. And I did see the little, what you have up with the Batman and stuff, with the ideas of it. So
Yeah.
I would love to be able to see it as well. But I think you had a question. didn't you?
It was answered.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to keep talking. But yeah, that was the only other thing. And I personally don't think that, we don't love to regulate hours of restaurants. That's not our thing. And, you know, I just don't feel like this is the same type of situation where we're really concerned about the level of smoke. You said it is this a restaurant grade? it looked like it on the form. It's a restaurant grade machine, so it's used to that type of work, right?
Yeah, this is like, this is the top of the line, like restaurant industrial smoker. It's
Yeah.
actually a rotisserie oven. I've been using them for 15 years. They're very stable, very
Yeah.
trustworthy. You know, you basically set it, load it, walk away, come back, it's finished. It's
Yeah,
very
I would
little
rather
moving
not
parts.
put regulation on ours and have you do
I
your
appreciate-
business.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
But thank you for offering, and the reassurance. That was all my questions.
Like I said, from my position, I'm willing to okay everything but the mural at this point in time. I want to see it before, because that's a huge mural. You're taking the whole side of the building.
Yeah.
It's quite an area. I'd like to see it before it.
Joe, is there a way we can have them back without having them go through a process that's rigorous for them, just to kind of appear and?
Yeah, so what I would say tonight is that your motion would be, we're going to approve the site plan exclusive of the mural. We'd like them to return for approval of the mural when they have the design finalized. And from an administrative standpoint, Nick and I can take that and view it as a continuation of their application, so they're not submitting another fee and all that stuff. They don't have to go through the entire site plan process again. We'll come back to you with the mural and a review that's focused on the mural. There's only 3 standards, so it's really a pretty short little memo for you. I don't see that as being a problem at all.
So with that motion, they can get started on the other work, correct?
Yes, they would be able to get started on all their other work, and we wouldn't have to consider the mural a condition of the approval. It's a separate approval that comes later.
That makes sense, thanks.
Can I just note one other thing that maybe when you come back with the mural, I would be asking, if you're using a muralist, he's probably familiar with the type of paint and stuff like that. Just, I'll probably want to know, make sure it's, made to last and it's not gonna,
Durability, yeah.
chip away in a year, right? So that would be, I'm ready to make a motion if everybody else.
But have you spoke to the owner of the car lot next door about all this, the plan? And
We have, the landlord has
Yeah.
been getting a meeting in the works, so I could come present the idea to him
Okay.
specifically.
just when you're painting the mural, you're going to be on his property, and just want to make sure everything's.
Yeah, and
Everyone's happy
our
and-
goal is to make it something that doesn't interfere with obviously raise it above the look of all his cars that'll be there.
Nice.
Both for the intention of being able to see the mural, but also so that it doesn't kind of mess with what he's already got going on. Almost frames it so that if anything, it's a plus, drawing attention to the products that he's selling. That's the goal.
You know, with the cityscape in the back, it seems like that would be a benefit to the car dealership, quite frankly, but, yeah, talk to him and see what he says.
Yeah,
It's a nice thing when applicants come for a site plan approval and they have a letter or they have the neighbor come and say, like, we've worked together, we like this is good for us, there's a harmony there, there's not a fight or something like that. So if the ultimate arrangement is complementary from the car dealer's perspective, that would be a cherry on top. It's your property, but it would be nice. And I think as neutral a theme is great, and I like the branding that you're trying to do. I think I saw in one rendering of it, you had the Vigilante logo or the, maybe even, I don't know what exactly you have planned, but it looked like a very nice logo. At some point, the mural starts to kind of compete with the things we're trying to do with the sign ordinance. So if it so happens that your sign is very clearly on the front face of the building and complies with the sign ordinance, is really great. And what is happening on the mural isn't like trying to put Vigilante in huge font on the side to try to get one up on all the other restaurants in town. It would, if it so happens that you don't put the future, in a planning review in jeopardy of that conversation, probably a good thing.
I understand. Yeah, I also think that I like the subtle touch of I don't like art to look branded. So I think that really all I'm looking to do, which is represented there, is make our badge, our little V badge, like a bat symbol, calling out, all the industry workers to come take action. And I think that's much cooler than
Oh, yeah.
putting
The
it up
anime
on the
is a
wall.
neat thing. It's very contemporary. I'm sure it'll draw.
How do you stand on timing? When do you plan on opening up?
We're hopeful to be September, October
Oh.
of this year. But that's just contingent on how fast we can get the work done, but that's our goal, that's our current target.
Okay.
What's the type of food? What's your?
So we do elevated Midwest with world influence and classical French execution. So basically, take things that people are very familiar with, like grilled cheese and tomato soup. But the tomato soup is made with red miso and shiitake and ginger and garlic and finished with coconut cream. And the grilled cheese is on Japanese Hokkaido milk bread. And we use a house smoked pinconning and taleggio with caramelized onions. So it's like a elevated version of what everybody kind of loves in the Midwest. And then we pull in world influence, a lot of Asian influence as well, into the food to make it sort of fresh and exciting.
Very cool.
Sounds good.
Sorry, one other question, Mr. Chairman. The sign on the front, the actual Vigilante sign, is it paint? Is it,
So we're looking to do like a cut steel
okay,
and then have it be sort of like the Fairway sign where there's just that glow around the letters.
okay.
So like a cut steel with a back glow.
Backlit, so it glows.
Yeah, that's the goal on that.
Yeah, that's a good look. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds nice.
Okay, if there's nothing further, I'll entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the site plan, and I don't know why it's an amendment. It's a site plan amendment for 76 West 14 Mile Vigilante Kitchen, with the caveat that they come back to planning for a review of the mural,
Support?
Final design of the mural, I think.
final design of the mural.
Okay, I have motion support. Anybody want to change anything? Everybody happy with it? I'd like roll call, please.
Mr. Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Casera?
Yes.
Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Solomon?
Yes.
Mr. Tinlin?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Fitzer?
Yes.
Thank you. Welcome to Clausen. And we'll move on to agenda item number 8, which is public hearing on the short-term rental ordinance.
Yeah, so we've obviously discussed this at some length here, and I've provided a final amending ordinance and the previous memo. And basically, we sent something to council and council sent it back, so we made some adjustments. The major adjustments here really are that council didn't want a particular requirement for a fence, and so that's been removed. We wanted to look at adding something that kind of points out what the exceptions are to short-term rentals. So if you look at under item 5 or part 5 there, item 4 has some standards for what's not considered to be a short-term rental. Like if you're occupying the house after you sell it to someone else, there's a few different things that we talked about there. So really, we're just looking to send it back to council and hopefully they'll be in agreement with this version of it. If not, then I suppose we'll probably have to get together for a meeting of both bodies. But hopefully they will be in agreement with this, and we'll be able to move
I'm
on.
pretty sure this will satisfy them.
Good.
Okay. Do we have any kind of reports on the existing short-term rentals, police activity or calls or complaints?
I don't know that there's been any change since the last time we looked at that information.
I heard there was one complaint on one of them in town here, and police should have. Parking, they're not allowed to park on the streets? Is that where I read someplace?
Just like everybody else, you can't leave your car on the street overnight.
But you can during the day, you can party all day long. And-
Yeah, you could park it out there during the day.
Okay, so I think that was a problem I've heard, that there was too much traffic around one. But, that's a police problem, not ours, I believe. I'd be happy to sign off on this and send it up. Anybody else, any comments on it, changes?
Well, There were a few things I had. You know, we have one, I think I've heard rumors that it's actually a licensed Airbnb now on East 14 Mile across from the church. So this is across from, it's like the new modern style. I don't know the exact address.
Across from Guardian Angels. Yep.
Right
Oh, across from Guardian Angels. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, I know which house you're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
It was built as a short-term rental.
Yeah. So I've driven past it plenty of times where there's like 3 or 4 cars parked on the grass, which isn't very sightly, and it blocks the sidewalk in some cases. So it brings to mention, you know, what is the parking requirement? I saw that you had drafted some language in there, Joe, to basically say one space for 3 occupants.
Yep.
Could you walk me through the math of that? So,
So you've got to have enough, either, well, if you're letting people use your garage, that would count as, a space if it was a 1-car garage, or 2 if it was a 2-car garage, and then you've got to have enough driveway to accommodate the additional spaces that would be required. You're not supposed to be parking on the lawn. That is a rule citywide, so if someone is parking on a lawn, that's something that you could lodge a complaint about, because it's simply not permitted.
yeah.
So yeah, you've got to have enough driveway and/or garage to accommodate the spaces that are required for your short-term rental.
So I know you're not familiar with that particular property, but if you could just take the run-of-the-mill, you know, bungalow, 2 bedrooms on the first floor, something upstairs, how many occupants technically would that have?
Well, there is a limit on occupancy overall. It's not in the zoning ordinance, it's in the other ordinance. I think it's 8 people, but I don't recall offhand. I could open it and let you know.
So let's round that to 9, just to make the math easy. So if it was 9, and we allow, you know, we only have to have 1 parking space for 3 people, it would be 3 parking spaces, including the garage, right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Something like that.
Yep.
So it seems a little generous. And I guess where I'm trying to go is, we don't have the best track record for code enforcement. It puts a lot of strain on the police and code enforcement officers as it is. It would be nice if the standard or the requirement just ensured the applicants who are trying to be in Airbnb had enough parking for the type of house they have. I would argue that place across from the church it seems to have plenty of rooms. Lots of people go there, and there's actually, I think, a pretty good driveway, and yet still they park on the grass. So ideally, they wouldn't have been issued a license with that deficiency. They would have a bigger driveway, or they would do something to have enough parking so that it doesn't block the sidewalk and the grass. So
Yeah, I mean, I would think that site has at least 3 spaces on the driveway. So why people are parking on the lawn is a little beyond me, but,
yeah, me too. But I've seen it multiple times. Like on a multifamily apartment, it would be one parking space per 1 bedroom. And I think 1.5 for an efficiency, 2 for a 2-bedroom. So it seems like we hold the multifamilies to a lot more discipline than we would the Airbnb. So that was one comment I had. I'm just going to also mention.
Part of the problem with parking like that is people are renting these things over the weekends, and they're Saturday and Sunday they're there, and code enforcement's not in town.
Very good.
And unless somebody calls the police, and the police have to go and try to figure out how to deal with it.
I mean, I would be very comfortable, certainly with 1 parking space per occupant. That seems like very, very fair. If we're talking about a bungalow having, 6 or 7, it would be too much, right? So instead of 3, maybe 2 would be a good compromise, just to get a little bit closer. The other question I had was, since we don't have the fencing, did we take this opportunity to make some kind of a position on the application requirements for Airbnbs for dogs? I'm just thinking maybe you have a neighbor on that fence or that property line that doesn't have a fence, and someone gets injured because of a visitor's, a guest's dog. It's just a thought.
I think you'd have to do that in a police powers ordinance. You couldn't really do that in zoning. It's not a zoning item. You could do that in a police powers ordinance. So if they ever were to revisit the Clausen short-term rental ordinance, that's something that could be added to it, certainly.
Oh,
Because
Yeah.
we had a thing about you need a fence in there, and council didn't want that, so it was taken out. And that's what we can do. We can say you got to have a fence because that's part of the physical design of the site. And the dog issue is more of a temporal and enforcement item. It's really more of a police power thing.
yeah.
So.
I mean, I agree. I just, frankly, I really like the idea of a fence. I know that we got very limited feedback from council. It happened kind of informally that we heard this. We don't like the fence, and we don't like the inspection interval. Those were the two things that I remember. Maybe you can help me if I'm forgetting another big one.
Well, and I think the fence part was because ideally these are moving out of a residential.
Yeah.
So to have the component of a fence, and I was gonna bring that up too about the garage and or paved driveway. I think we might wanna clean up that for future, like dedicated spot maybe, I don't know, not to get off on a tangent. But, because we're moving it out of residential, it made sense with the fence, because we can't make, I forget which, I-1, industrial,
Yeah.
or wherever we're allowing the motel to require them to have a fence would be a little bit,
Yeah, and
more
I see
difficult.
where you're going, I think, and if there was no such thing as grandfathered properties, going into it, it would be perfectly said, because you're worrying about nothing. But as it happens, there are properties that are probably going to be grandfathered in, that we're trying to get to a point of compliance where they get to do what they have been doing, but they're doing it in a way that doesn't disrupt their neighbors. So I think a fence would be helpful for that, adequate parking that's not overtaking the street. A lot of people don't know our overnight parking policy, so they park over the street anyway. It's a whole thing. So I think that if we make improvements to the language of this particular ordinance, it would be a good thing. And yeah, I acknowledge that one of the council members didn't like the inspections. The interval of them especially, he didn't seem to like the idea that we were going into someone's house to inspect smoke detectors or something like that. But I think we really didn't have a good opportunity to defend that, but it's a business. There's people living there. There's a good reason to make sure that it's safe and that it's not easily going to create a fire hazard or which could affect their neighbor. Again, I'm trying to always think like, if I would live next door to one, would I say, yeah, the city did everything they could to make this disruption as minimal as possible, as safe as possible with that? That's where my head is at on it. And last thing was trash receptacles. People who visit an Airbnb, they don't know what our trash day is. They don't know these things. You don't have to have a trash receptacle, but I think it would be good to force them to have, lidded, hinged lid trash receptacles so that just trash bags or loose trash in our windy conditions just doesn't end up blowing into a fence line or a neighbor or anywhere. That like it's a requirement for them to have a license to have the lidded trash cans.
So many of the things you're speaking of make sense for those that are grandfathered in, but they don't make as much sense for those that are going to be in the zoned areas that we have already identified.
Right.
I don't know that we can do anything in this language that's going to be applicable and make a difference for those that are already grandfathered in. I don't know, Joe, if you can
It is a
comment on
fair
that.
point that they're already a non-conforming use, so without a change in the use, they're allowed to continue as they are.
Joe, do we have language at all? I know we talked about it. Remember like the good neighbor kind of thing that we talked about probably 2 years ago?
Yep.
Is there anything in the city council's ordinance that talks about some type of welcome letter that is supposed to be posted in each unit that we might be able to call out maybe that,
We actually have it in our draft ordinance.
Okay,
'cause
I
it's-
thought I read it
And we put
somewhere.
it in there because it's not in the,
Oh, okay.
in the short-term rental ordinance. So we've got the item 1 there, each short-term rental
Oh.
shall post in a clearly visible location the following notice and copies or summaries of all local ordinances referenced within. And that's something that the city, provided that this is adopted, will put together and make sure is
so
posted.
could we maybe add, maybe this won't specifically address the dog and the fence thing, but that like, dogs must be licensed, certain things that might address these issues that would be allowing those tenants or those, occupiers to know, post in these residential ones, trash day, what day is trash, that our city requires dogs to be licensed. I don't know if that would help at all, Nate, kind of make you feel better.
I only got down this path because we started talking about parking.
Yeah, well, and then maybe even the parking, that we don't have parking overnight. I think it would be helpful for, if I was staying at an Airbnb, to know that, no, I don't want to wake up to a ticket. Is that something that you think we could include? And does that mean we have to like spend 2 more years on this?
No, I mean, I think it would just be a matter of reference of, so we've got this list of ordinances here that have to be, that it says the unit is subject to those ordinances. And that can be a fact sheet that says what those ordinances, that summarizes those ordinances, but you gotta have the full thing there too for people to review. So solid waste is covered, because it says you've gotta, it lays out what you've gotta have on a residential property, or a commercial property for, solid waste management and removal. You'd probably wanna, put in there when the trash day is for that address. But dogs are required to be leashed and licensed. There's an ordinance that says that in your code.
It just might be
So we
helpful
could
to call it
add
out,
that
yeah.
code to that list of codes. And that way, we're just referring to the codes in our ordinance, which is something we can do within
Okay.
a zoning ordinance. And we can also, there is an ordinance that says there's no on-street parking overnight, so we can make sure that that one's referenced in there too.
I mean,
I mean, how could you enforce dogs being licensed if most of the occupant, a good chance of the tenants or renters are gonna be out of state or out of town?
Well, yeah,
I'm not necessarily saying it'll enforce necessarily, but they'll just be more conscious of their animal, I guess, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're just conscious of animals, and I don't know. I'm not looking to go out expecting to give tickets or revoke a
trying to-
license
yeah.
because the dog was.
I mean, I think it's more the leash thing,
Yeah.
you can,
I wouldn't even be bringing this up if we didn't delete the fence, so.
oh, yeah, it's in the other ordinance, yeah.
As it stands now,
Thanks, though.
these Airbnb operators, I'm envisioning one in the audience now, would say, like, it's a perk for me to be able to offer to my clients that you can have your dog with you. I love dogs, by the way. But when they're dogs that my neighbors don't know, like everybody knows Teddy, but not, if I had a new Airbnb guest every week, they wouldn't know those dogs. So it's just, it's a unique hazard potentially that I was trying to put in there, because the ordinance, I think, could say, no pets, and the Airbnb operator may have to say, our policy is no pets in the city of Clawson. I don't know if that's legal. I just wanted to ask the question. I think the goal should be to get this out quickly. I think everybody's in agreement that this has been going on too long. We haven't had this definition that at least controlled the zoning. So I will vote yes for this.
Yeah.
Are we actually holding a vote on this tonight, or are we just
Yeah,
having a
yeah.
discussion on it? The agenda says public hearing. Am I supposed to open
Well,
this for the public?
you are going to have to open the public hearing at some point, but yes, you are able
I
to
could open it
discuss
now and say
prior.
that, open for public hearing. Seeing none, I will then close public hearing.
Okay, well,
It
you've
takes
checked
care of
that box then.
responsibility.
I do like the idea of the leash, because at least then, it just, of course, everybody knows they're supposed to have their dog on the leash,
Yeah.
but you still see people every day. So
Yeah.
I think it's helpful, and it's something that, neighbors can know, hey, if they've got repeated guests out there with the dog without a leash, then you call, okay? So I like that. I don't know if that makes you feel satisfied, Nate.
I mean, is everybody comfortable on the planning commission with the fence delete?
I am.
The delete, yeah. Yeah, I just think a lot of the items we're talking about, I think there's language in the ordinance that addresses most of it. It's just, one, making the visitor aware, and two, enforcing it. So I really like your idea
Those are the major
about some type
challenges.
of mandatory, list of the city ordinances. But then the other component of it is we need to enforce these things, so that's a different argument.
Well, we can educate the public as much as possible about it so that they know the proper channels. I think that's
Yeah.
where, maybe if they made a police report, if we start letting the public know that, hey, follow up with that police report, make sure the building department might know. It's a lot more work on the neighbors, but I think they'll be happy to do it if it's truly a nuisance, right?
Yeah, and that's
because-
part of the reason
yeah.
that we put these other two items under 1A is, one is that the message, there's two messages that have to be conveyed to the renter. The unit is located in or near a residential neighborhood and the neighbors may not be vacationing. Because it doesn't matter where it is in Clawson, it's going to be at least near a residential neighborhood. And then neighboring property owners or tenants may contact the local agent and local police to report any issues relating to the property. So it's kind of like out there that somebody could call on you if you're not behaving properly in this unit. And I've seen that done in other places where I've used these units,
Just a general question. So, being that we don't have active code enforcement on the weekends and off hours, is the police, do they have the authority to actually enforce code enforcement, or is it all just criminal and civil law?
They can respond to citizen complaints. I mean, I don't know the exact protocols or anything for it, but they are able to respond to code issues.
I believe it would be more of a nuisance type issues,
Exactly, yeah,
right?
nuisance issues,
And the
yeah.
problem is they don't even know if it's a rental when they're going there. They don't necessarily know it's an Airbnb, so.
Right.
The problem happens with reporting back, you know.
Because they're going to respond to it not under the zoning ordinance. They're going to
Right.
respond to it based on a violation of Chapter 42 nuisances or Chapter 46 offenses against public peace and order or something like that. They're not really going out to get a zoning issue.
Sorry.
But, like if someone's got the wrong size sign or something, the police will never go to that. That's on code enforcement.
Now, in the event that they are called on a ordinance complaint that does transpire into a nuisance, is there a mechanism that they report to code enforcement and it gets fouled up, or does it kind of just two separate departments that
Yeah.
operate separately that we never really know, and we're not able to actually, compile data on all these issues?
I do think they communicate. I don't really know the details there, unfortunately, because it's just not really in my purview. But yeah, I know that code enforcement communicates with the police department. I don't know what the formal reporting, cross-reporting,
Well,
protocols
code
are.
enforcement reports to the police department. Aren't they in the same department? Aren't they connected? with the
Code
police?
enforcement
Yeah.
does report everything it does to the police department, yeah.
So this do's and don'ts list we're talking about now, would that really fall in our zoning ordinance, or is it really more on the city council's ordinance?
Well, if you're going to put any specific standards related to any of that stuff, it would have to be in the city council ordinance. We, however, in a zoning ordinance can refer to our other ordinances just fine.
And just to be clear, he was talking about the police reporting to code, not code reporting to police.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know
I
what the
think the
protocol is
missing
for that.
mechanism with that would be residents, right? We just have to let residents know. If you make a police report, then you might want to follow up with code enforcement to make sure that that message is relayed, because I doubt code enforcement goes through every police report on Monday to see which ones are
I'm sure they
Airbnbs, right?
probably
Like, how
don't,
practical
yeah.
would that be?
Yeah,
So-
they're not really concerned with public drunkenness and stuff, you know?
Right, right. So with those points that you listed, Joe, did you add the reference to the leash law type thing? You added those, so those would be
Yeah, I'll get the
amended?
proper chapter numbers to put
Okay.
them in there, but yes, the animal control and the on-street parking overnight are the two that we have to add. Solid waste is covered under
Okay.
62.
My only other thing was, should we address in a more overarching way so that we don't have to go back and amend it because these commercial properties don't necessarily have a garage and driveway?
I already put a note in here to modify that to within a garage and/or on a paved driveway or dedicated parking space.
Okay, and that's good enough, you think, for that
Yeah,
one?
that will cover everything, yeah.
My last thing was, during the rationale portion of this, I was wondering if we could just maybe add at the very end of the recommendation for the interior inspection that somehow work in there that because it's a transient and I guess I don't know the right language for it, but because it's a highly trafficked use, we thought that an inspection would be helpful for,
Do you like the phrase high turnover use?
high turnover is great, yeah.
I'm sorry, so are you proposing an inspection, or?
Well,
This
'cause we
is
already
in
have-
the, we're in the memo now. We've moved from the amending
Inspection-
ordinance to the memo.
We still included that, right?
Yeah.
We still included it, but they put rationale so that when it goes back to city council, they'll be like, oh, that's why they wanted to. And hopefully they'll either, hopefully we can be done with it.
What is the inspection again? Where is this? I
believe
thought I
it's-
saw it.
So this is in the memo, on page 2 of the memo, we're out of the amending ordinance now.
Okay.
There's a section of the memo called Planning Commission Rationale and Recommendations to Council for the General Ordinance. And we talk about the desire for some sort of inspection regime in there, and try to give a little bit of the Planning Commission's thinking behind that.
But it's not in the language we're sending them.
No, it was specifically, first of all, we can't put that in zoning, that's gotta be a police powers ordinance. But we had a more frequent inspection, regimen last time that was, rejected by council, so we've kind of
Backed off
loosened
on
up the
that.
timeline a little bit but kept the spirit of the, suggestion.
So you are gonna send, obviously this isn't gonna be in the ordinance, but you'll send the rationale to them with the ordinance?
Yes, the memo goes
Oh, okay.
with the amending ordinance to council when it gets into their packet, yeah.
Now, Joe, with all these edits, is it going to have to come back to us again?
These are simple.
Some simple ones, okay.
Table edits, we can do these live.
Thank you for the question.
No, it's a great
We've
question.
been working on this a while.
Yep.
Are you
I'll
looking?
make a motion.
Are you looking for a motion on this that we
Yes.
approve and send on?
Do I have to motion, because the potential motion just has us, approve it, do I have to?
As
motion-
revised. If you approve it, you recommend approval
As
by
amended?
council as revised tonight, yeah.
Do I have to recommend that you send it to city council, or that's enough, just to approve?
Well, yeah, you're recommending that we send it to city council for
Okay.
approval, yeah.
I will make a motion to approve the zoning ordinance as amended and have you present it to council.
Second.
Motion, support, anything else we want to hash?
I just want to reiterate that this is our one chance to get this right. So we're not giving any specific language to council other than what you see in the actual language now. So if you want something different, now's the time. I absolutely think the parking is inadequate. I wish that would change. And I think that we should specify, inspections in this language. I think that we should ask Joe to put that specifically in there. If it's 3 years, if it's 5 years, if it's 10 years.
Didn't we put
But
that in there,
don't-
Shel?
We can't do inspection language in a zoning ordinance. It's gotta be in a police powers ordinance.
Okay.
Not our approval.
Yeah, so we're recommending it in the memo that accompanies the ordinance, but
All
that's
right.
about that's what we have the power
Okay,
to
so
do.
everything else in Article 34 came through that mechanism then? Okay. Still, does that apply to parking?
Parking is a zoning function, so, yeah.
No.
That's something you can all discuss if you want, but
I would like to refine it from 3 to 2. Just to give a little more safety factor for adequate parking and nobody parking on the grass.
I just have a problem with like carpooling situations where, you know, you could meet the occupancy requirement or maximum and still be able to fit that in one passenger vehicle. I just think it really comes down to the enforcement of it. Like, I don't think it's right to, you know, like a van, right? You can transport 4 or 5 people, 5, 6 people in a van and still meet that requirement for the occupancy.
Sorry, but did somebody second my motion? I just
Yeah,
wanna-
so we have a motion on the floor and it's been seconded, so if we
Well, I
want
know
to.
we can discuss.
Yeah, discuss.
Okay.
Right.
I just want to make sure it was seconded.
Yes.
I understand where you're coming from. I just, you know, I just have a hard time with really tackling the problem by just limiting parking. I think there's more to it, and that's enforcement. But, my thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it becomes a problem, it becomes an enforcement problem.
Right. I mean, you can put all the requirements in place. It doesn't matter unless
I guess,
it's,
let me just paint a fictitious example then. So you are a landlord, you're looking at buying property in Clausen, and you find out that the city has a very lenient parking policy for short-term rentals. You know, if it was a normal residence, you'd have to have 1.5 parking spaces for 1 bedrooms, but if it's considered an Airbnb, you can have this 0.33 effectively requirements per occupant. So it's very lenient in that regard. So of course you drive that property to be a short-term rental.
well, I don't think it's lenient in the fact that they can't park in the street, so that's an enforcement issue. They can't park on the lawn. You can't cross the sidewalk with your vehicle. So you can park everywhere where you have adequate parking. A driveway, a garage, and
So you're saying the issue of 14 Mile is already addressed by ordinance because they're already breaking our ordinance because they're parking on the
Right, they're
lawn
breaking
and the
ordinance,
sidewalk.
it's just not being enforced.
Right.
I mean, if you have the driveway space.
You
I
got a
think
little
should
bit
have the
more,
right to use it.
you got a little bit more control when you're issuing licenses for property. So it's one thing if, you know, I just decide to park on the street overnight at my house, right? It's clearly just, I'm not following the law. But when it's a business and you have the opportunity to make the regulations a certain way, you have more control to get in front of a problem. Everything I'm talking about is getting in front of a problem. Relying on the police and code enforcement and the ordinance is after the problem already happened. So you're right. Like, it could be the right thing is to have 100 times more code enforcement agents, and probably the problem will go away that way. I just don't know if it will happen. So I'm not dying on this hill. I just wanted to have the conversation
Well, I'm
about it.
curious, Joe, when they issue a license, do they go, is part of their issuing a license saying how many, this house is, or licensed to have X many occupants?
Yes, but that's based entirely on the house right now because there isn't a parking requirement for this use right now in our ordinances. So this would become something that they would have to look at.
Gotcha.
And also, it's in the tenet of this, we're really going to restrict any more Airbnbs being in a residential area, right? We're going to restrict them to a very
Yeah.
short, small area of town.
Yeah.
So eventually, this is going to heal itself, too.
I do agree with that. And if they're in a industrial, commercial area, I don't want to get so restrictive because, you know, most likely they're going to be like, you know, me and my 2 kids, that's 3. You know, I don't think that they're going to have to utilize the 2 spots, but, you know, I suppose there's always outliers everywhere too, right? I don't know.
Okay, so I did not hear anybody threatening to amend the motion, so I think it can proceed with a vote. Yeah.
I have a motion, I have support. If there's no further conversation, we'll take roll call, please.
Mr. Casera,
Yes.
Ms. Redmond,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Solomon,
Abstain.
Mr. Tinlin,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzer,
Yes.
Mr. Hara.
How many yeses do we have?
6.
Okay, I'll abstain too. It passes, right?
Yes.
It's almost like we have to print up a 8.5 by 11 letter and then frame it with glass and wood and screw it to the inside of the door. You go to a hotel, you know, on
Yeah.
the hotel door, it tells you
By your exit.
what you can and can't do, you know, where the ice machine is, keep your towels in your room. And, you know, we have to get to that point, so that the people that get there know what they're responsible for. Okay, then we'll move on to number 9, which is discussion of ground floor parking. We've had a little bit of a discussion on it before.
Right. But let me apologize for this getting to you in printed form tonight. The intent was to send it on Friday, but when I hit reply all on the packet email, no email addresses came up. So I wasn't able to send it. So we have it tonight to look at. Following along on the discussion we had last time, you asked for some more information on things, maybe some visual aids, so that's what I've tried to provide here. We've got some parking dimensions, and there is some discussion, we're really gonna get on page 2 here. Where we're talking about the dimensions of like a group of 20 parking spaces that are 10 to a side of an aisle. And the dimensions that you need for that. You have about 5,760 square feet that occupies. It's an average of 288 square feet per space. So that allows us to do some very, very rough math about how many parking spaces could be accommodated in various footprints of buildings. And what I did is I went and I looked at 3 different properties. 2 of them are approved plans that haven't been built yet, but they were recently approved, and they're projects that are sort of in the same realm of what we might expect to be looking at this as an option. That's 150 North Main and 172 West 14 Mile. If you're trying to orient yourself on either of those, the old PNC Bank and the old Burger King, for anybody watching at home. And then I also looked at 100 to 136 Gardner, which is an older apartment building. It's been there for quite a while. And I just measured their footprints. And you can see that in the ground floor area column of this table. The number of parking spaces that are provided on the site is in the 3rd column there. So this is the total that they've got. 150 North Main has 76 it was approved with. 172 West 14 Mile was approved with 44. And 100 to 136 Gardner has 69 spaces. And if you take that ground floor area, assuming it's the right dimensions, of course, this is a kind of a rough proxy measurement, these are the number of spaces that could be accommodated in 50% of that ground floor area. So if you had 50% of that devoted to parking on the ground floor, this is the number of spaces you'd get there. And you can redo the math with 60% or 70% or whatever percentage you want to figure out roughly how many spaces you could get on the ground floor of that building. So if we were going to allow...
Sorry, this is the footprint of the building.
Yeah, this is the footprint of the building,
Okay.
exactly, yep. So if you were going to allow the uses to rise up and the parking to go underneath them, and we get some sort of bonus of floor numbers or something, this is kind of what you'd be moving inside from outside on the lot. In the case of 172 West 14 Mile, of course, there's commercial on the ground floor, so you're probably not going to put that much on the ground floor, but nevertheless, almost all the parking spaces actually fit in that footprint of the building. Whereas it's a much smaller percentage for the other two properties. Other information that we wanted, we asked about the minimum clearance height of a residential parking structure. That's 7 feet, which is very low. That's a tight. If you got a Tahoe or something, that's gonna feel like, oh my God,
Yeah.
every time you go in there. So I wouldn't recommend setting 7 feet as a minimum, but that is the absolute minimum that you can get away with in one of these structures. I think 8 or 9 feet is a lot safer.
They could dig 2 feet out,
Well, yeah, that would be, yeah, exactly, that would be
more headspace.
nice. So in the CC and CMD districts, that's city center and central mixed use, we require a minimum height of 15 feet for the ground floor, and then a minimum ceiling height, rather, of 15 feet for the ground floor, and a minimum ceiling height of 9 feet for upper floors. So if you were gonna have like a lower ceiling height in the garage and a higher ceiling height in any space that might be sharing the ground floor with the garage, that becomes very impractical from a construction standpoint. 2 different floor plates on the same level is really hard to work with. So I think we want to try to steer away from that. So one potential solution to that is that you could consider permitting the ground floor height to be a little lower. If you're doing, I've got 50% as a minimum. If you're doing 50% of that ground floor as parking, obviously we can talk about whether or not that percentage is right or wrong. And allow one additional floor within the height limit of the district. So that'd be 42 feet with a 10-foot setback at the 3rd floor in the city center and 35 feet in the CMD. Alternatively, we did talk about 5 extra feet of height being permitted, perhaps with an increased setback for the upper floors from residential. So you might bump that back like you do on the front of the building. But I think this visual aid might help a little bit, because in the city center district, our maximum height is 42 feet if you have that 10-foot setback above the 2nd floor. If you actually break it down to 15, 9, 9, and 9, that fits within 42 feet. So obviously that's not going to be the ceiling height for each of those, because you do need some space between floors. There's a width of the floor plate, and then there's a little bit of interstitial space between floors. So your ceiling heights are going to fall somewhere within this. And with the 42 feet right now and the ceiling height standard, you don't actually get 4 stories within 42 feet, but you're close. So if you did want to be incentivizing this ground floor parking, you could potentially lower those ceiling heights a little bit to allow things to fit within 42 feet. Then you're not even actually adding any height, you're just allowing the height to be carved up differently. And the same thing happens in the central mixed district. If you add the 15, the 9, and the 9 together, that actually comes out to 33. We allow 35-foot height in that district. So you could fit 3 floors in there if you were willing to let the whole floor be 9 feet and 15 feet rather than the floor to ceiling height.
So, but what would those be constructed at? Would they be 7-foot ceilings once you get into the apartment?
You might wind up with something like 7 or 8 foot ceilings, or you could bring down the ground floor more and go from
Right.
15 to
That's where I was
12 or
thinking.
something, and then you keep the 9s.
Because we require a 20% commercial, right? In both CMD and CC?
There has to be a minimum 20-foot depth
20
of
foot.
commercial along the front of the building as it faces a major thoroughfare. If you're off of a major thoroughfare, that liner is not required. But if you're on a major thoroughfare, you do have to have that commercial liner, yeah.
Do you feel like 50% is a safe number or a safe percentage? Or do you feel like,
I think that gives you some accommodation for other things to be happening on the ground floor, like a lobby, storage rooms, utilities and things like that, maybe a unit or 2 even. But I do think that you're going to lose some of that ground floor to your liner use. So we've got to be mindful of that, and we can't have too high a percentage that you're squeezing the liner use. But then you also have to have those other just like practical, where does the trash go?
right? Well, the reason why I was
kind of
asking that is because that liner
uses.
use really, that's the reason why we have a 15-foot, because it's a commercial
It
use.
is, yeah, it is,
But-
yeah.
But if you think about a retail, it depends really. Restaurants, in most stores that you go into, I think they won't feel too enclosed if it's not 15-foot
I
ceilings.
think 12 is probably fine for a lot of businesses, yeah, or even less in some cases. But yeah, 15 feet is pretty tall. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at the lady who's used for reference here, I mean, it's well more than twice as tall as she is. And, you know, there aren't a lot of people who are 7 feet tall. So, you know, most people
Yeah.
aren't halfway to that ceiling by any means when you've got a 15-foot ceiling in a commercial space.
Yeah.
What was the rationale for establishing the 15-foot in the first place?
I think it was trying to get to some sort of modern commercial development standard. That's my impression anyway, because that's kind of how most commercial space is built today, is with fairly tall ceilings. So I think that was the rationale behind that. It's very prescriptive. It's a prescriptive standard. So, I mean, I guess from my perspective, I don't really have much of an issue with coming down from that a little bit if we're getting something out of it.
Well, yeah, and do you think that that's enough? I mean, because I feel like in an apartment, I would rather keep a 9-foot ceiling, because then you're just going to feel so claustrophobic
Sure,
in those
yeah.
things.
Yeah, and the other thing about, you know, you do need, on a commercial application, you do need extra head height to run the utilities, such as ductwork,
Lighting,
water
fans.
suppression systems and whatnot. So, I mean, 9 feet is pretty tight in those applications, but it's doable. You know, probably on the first floor, 10 to 12 would be sufficient to accommodate all the plumbing, HVAC, you know, fire suppression and whatnot.
Do you feel like a 10-foot ceiling in a restaurant would feel claustrophobic? It's hard to visualize.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's low, but I mean, it's up to the developer.
It's hard to
really.
know what that would feel like.
I mean, it
it's-
might feel like an old school pub, you
It
know,
might.
like, before it was Charlie's, what was it before it was Charlie's? Frittata. Remember Frittata?
Yeah, that's low. That was like 8.
That was like an 8-foot
Yeah.
ceiling. You went in there and it just felt like this cozy little space.
I
you
mean,
know?
it's not uncommon for commercial spaces to be, the actual ceiling or wall height may be 12 to, 14,
Sure.
15, but it's brought down, with some type of decorative ceiling.
Yeah,
But the purpose
exactly.
is to hide the mechanicals.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a challenge for developers, but if you give them the option, I mean, at least they have the option to figure that out.
Sure.
So Joe, just since we're talking here, so where did the 42 and 35 come from? I mean, again, we're not talking, we want to build a Royal Oak, but what happens if you just added a couple more feet there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how 42 and 35 were arrived at. What made those the particular numbers? I think it was just a matter of trying to provide enough space for all of the stuff we were just talking about, the ducts and pipes and all the other things that need to course through a building to make it functional. I'm pretty sure that's really what it was for. And then you're starting with 15 feet for that commercial ground floor, assumed commercial ground floor. So when you go up from there, you kind of can't really go much less than 9 for the other floors. And I think they were basically gave a little extra to the, because if you take this down to, just 3 floors or just two floors, and then you add a little bit to each of these for all that extra stuff that goes in between the floors, then you get closer to those height limits, but you're not necessarily there. And so, like the ACE project, that's about 42 feet tall, I think, at its tallest point. So that's really what that looks like. But it's only 3 stories in there. They've got a very tall ground floor. I think they're over 15 feet, in fact.
How about language like, just to set a minimum finished ceiling height? So a minimum ceiling height, a finished ceiling height could be 10 foot, where, that gives them the ability to expose some of the mechanicals and still, still have a functioning, lower headspace, I guess you can call it.
Sure, yeah. I mean, yeah, a lot of restaurants in particular will leave the mechanicals exposed, just paint them or something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So all of these scenarios you're looking at are effectively 4 stories then?
Well, in the city center, it's 4, and then in the central mix, it's 3.
Well, and I always have to go back to thinking about how this might be used in a PUD as well, and how it might be. Well, maybe I shouldn't go there yet, Joe.
Well, I think the
You're
idea here
15
is
feet,
try
you
to
should just
avoid
keep
having a
it.
PUD because people are able to do stuff, you know?
Well, and I hope that's what it is, but I hope that it doesn't get turned into, okay, we have no commercial, all ground floor parking, and here's our PUD, right? Because how far do you think we are away from getting this? It said that there's 2 applicants already that were interested in this. Is this something that,
I don't know that either of those are moving forward
Okay.
necessarily, but we've had people asking, yeah.
okay. Because that's something I definitely feel like I would like to play with a little more.
Sure, yeah, and I do have some bit about open space on the last page there. Because that's another thing we've discussed, is trying to get some additional open space on a site where we're giving them this extra floor within their height limit. Let's get something out of that other than just parking moving inside. Let's try to see if we can use some of the site that would have been used for parking otherwise for something else. So, if you've got a neighboring residential, you could definitely increase the size of the buffer. But you don't necessarily have neighboring residential everywhere in downtown. So
When you say buffer, you're talking about green space?
yeah, like
buffer?
like
Okay.
along the residential property line, yeah. So
So is this actual green space, or is it just,
well, that would be the idea, is it would
Okay.
have to be planted and you need extra trees and things like that. And then, another way of looking at that too is, what can that open space be? If it's not a buffer, are we looking for that to be landscaped only, or would we be willing to take some sort of like public space or plaza or something as open space on the site in exchange for giving this extra, allowance and letting people kind of use their building for parking without losing any of what they otherwise would have built?
I would
Do we-
love green space where they can have their dogs and not have to walk too far to take their dogs. Public space would be great. I mean, I don't know what you mean by public space. Does that mean we own it, or?
Well, I mean, it's probably more quasi-public is the correct way to say it, like an actual place for,
community.
people to sit.
the tenants
or,
use, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you've got a spot behind the building or something that's kind of like a mini park that would be open to everyone.
Like Roth has a
Yeah,
little
it
green
has a-
space in the
it
back, and that
does.
was ideal. I mean, that's just enough to where the residents feel like they don't have to do too much to take their dog
Sure.
out, or
Yep.
it's just, we have to have some type of green space in a multifamily, I feel like. But would this actually add to that, Joe? Do you think the numbers really work that well? Because 17 spaces, how practical do you think this really is, and do you think that it's a benefit?
Yeah, I mean, so if I were a developer looking at the possibility of using part of my ground floor for parking, I would probably look at what we got here and think of, rather than actually building a space that you drive into and maneuver within, I'd probably look at like a tuck-under situation, where
Yeah.
you're cutting into the building. It doesn't really change the structure of the building very much, but you're putting a bunch of parking spaces into the building. And you're getting them out of the rest of the site that way. And you've got a maneuvering lane and another bay of parking, most likely. That's most likely how I see this being used for the most part. If someone got their hands on an unusually large site or something, I could see them doing more of a full-on, you drive in and you park kind of situation where you've got multiple bays of parking. But I think from a practical standpoint, with the size of most of the sites that we're looking at, the tuck-under situation is much more likely than the full-on drive-in garage type of situation. You might actually get tuck-under with garage doors on them in some cases. But I think that's probably what you're most likely to see.
I think so too. I just wonder if it's gonna be enough incentive for them to also wanna add some more green space, and is this really enough incentive for them? And how far do you think that we have to go up ideally on a building for it to be workable? Cause it just, I don't know how much 3 feet is gonna give us on the bottom floor to actually accommodate a more. Is that, am I saying that right? I mean,
you might have to look at adding a couple feet, but I don't know that you need to go much more than that. I mean,
No.
we've already got headroom. I think, you know some more of the details of some of the construction aspect of it. But I mean, 4 stories and 42 feet, that's pretty doable. If it was 45, it would be more doable, I guess, but.
Yeah, I'd have to do the math, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, we could even run this by a few people who've, you know, applied and just see, does this look feasible to you? Is this something that you would even be interested in? And just see what responses we get.
do you know if Royal Oaks was like a tuck under situation, right?
They've got a few examples of that
Yeah.
around, yeah.
And I'd be interested to see like the actual, not that I expect you to go do it, but to see the site plan or like the ordinance that, so I can kind of just
Yeah.
make sense of it.
I haven't found anything in their zoning ordinance that says like, do this. I think
No.
it might have been at the initiative of the, applicant over there. But there's a lot of height being permitted there in some of
That's
those
true,
cases.
yeah.
A great deal of density.
Joe, what about the Amber Apartments there on Rochester Road by Gill's shop? They've got beneath parking garages in that multifamily.
Yeah, they do.
They've been there a while, but when they built
Yeah,
them.
that's an older development, so I don't really know the history of it.
Those
It's kind of
garages are
like
probably 8 foot tall though too, right?
they're pretty short, yeah.
Yeah.
They're residential garages for sure. And I think each one's tied to a unit. Because I think those units are stacked up above the garages,
Yep.
if I'm
Yeah, because it has pretty
visualizing
limited
the
drive,
building
so that's,
correctly.
I'm not sure how they got, you know, they obviously had parking spaces there, but they probably built those 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
sure, yeah.
Well, I think we're here talking about this because the reality is, we don't have enough parking, is the general feeling. So downtown, parking is precious, and if we do the ordinances and the zoning correctly, we will ease that problem and hopefully not create any others. If we do it wrong, we'll make the problem worse. So I guess my thought is anything that results in cramming more units onto the site would be directionally incorrect unless the parking somehow compensates for it. So the idea on the table here, I guess, is to delete the first floor commercial liner.
No, we're not looking to do that, actually, yeah.
Well, some of it, right? You're saying
No.
50% of it.
It's currently at 50%.
Yeah, so the commercial liner would still have to be the front 20 feet of the building, along the length of the building. And
Oh, okay.
that
I'm
includes
sorry. I
active uses too.
misunderstood.
So like your
Thank you.
lobby is gonna maybe cut into that, as you won't necessarily be all commercial space, but,
Okay.
you know, so that all would still be there. That's why we're saying 50 feet, 50% of
Okay,
the
it's just the
overall
back.
footprint. So you're still allowing for that liner use to occupy the other, part of the other 50%. And then you've got your other like lobby, mailroom, et cetera, type uses. We're trying basically to say like, look, the ground floor is gonna be the commercial and functional, you know, necessary space of this development. The units are gonna go on top, rather than having the units on the bottom, and then you get some of the parking for those units under the building to take up less of the lot with the parking. That's really the intent here.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, I can take a little bit more detailed look at like floor plate and utility kind of applications and just sort of see like how that really stacks up from an architectural and structural standpoint and see, okay, is 42 the right number? Is 35 the right number? Do we need to add a little bit of bonus? And then what's the minimum bonus that you might be able to add, if so, and see what I come up with for the next meeting.
Do you know, totally kind of side note, but do you know on MuniCode, can you search certain things? Like, I know you have to go into, typically, the way I go into MuniCode is state and then city, but is there a way to search specific, like, ground floor parking and see?
Oh, that would be awesome if there was,
No?
but I
Okay,
don't think
thought
there
maybe
is, yeah.
It was hidden somewhere. Because I know that there's a lot of it in other states, so it's just hard to know what cities allow it, so.
Right.
Because it'd be really helpful to have a few ordinances to look over. And I want to make sure it's incentivizing enough, right?
Sure,
And where that
yeah.
is, where that's at. And you're not looking for any type of motion right now, just kind of
No,
feedback?
no.
No action, just discussion. Have we maxed out our discussion?
Thanks for all the information, Joe. It's
Yeah,
very
I think
helpful.
for tonight, we're good, and I'll continue to refine the information and bring you more. And also, we'll make sure this gets emailed to you. If you're archiving your stuff digitally, I want to make sure you've got it. We didn't anticipate the problem that when the planning commission is set as a group, none of the addresses show up, so if you reply all, it won't actually reply to everybody. So I went to send it to everybody, I was like, I'm just sending it to Nick. So, again, apologies for that, but, I'll get some more of that, info for you, and we'll try to refine some of these numbers.
Right,
and
this isn't
give you
really
more.
drastically time sensitive, but if businesses come in and they're interested in it, we should have something
Yeah.
to talk to
yeah.
them about at least.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the Ace building? Is that one ground and then two?
Yes,
two
two
above?
stories
Okay.
above, exactly, yep.
They're
Yeah,
all
so-
commercial though, right?
The whole ground floor is commercial, and then there's 2 floors of residential above, yeah.
And the parking was different there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a somewhat different parking situation there because they had a private parking lot at Ace before they did that project, which of course is still part of that property. So it looks like one continuous parking lot, but there's a line you cross where suddenly you're on the Ace property, I should call it the Clausonian property now. And then some of it, then on the other side of the line is the public lot. But yes, so they provided some off-street parking for the commercial spaces and then some that were dedicated to the residential, where PF Galleries used to be as the residential only lot.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
And their structure height is 42 inches, or 42 feet, sorry, 42 feet?
I'll confirm that, but I do think that they are at 42 feet at the top part of the building.
Okay.
Okay, if that's settled, we can move on to number 10, which is presentation of the capital improvement plan.
Mr. Chair, are you waiting on me, or are you?
You gonna pitch us on the capital
I'm not gonna
improvement?
pitch you anything, sir. I'm just gonna basically explain a few things to you. So, Joe Raker, City Manager. So, Mr. Chair, if you recall my first year here, I think we had a little disagreement as far as you were like, who's pulling the capital improvements plan off the agenda? And that was me, because in my previous communities, we didn't have the capital improvements plan go before the planning commission, so I was wondering what the heck's going on. So we did do that eventually, and then I think the second year last year, we had some debate about benches, and then some debate about some computers, and it's like, why is this even planning before the planning commission? So this year, we kind of clarified it per the Planning Enabling Act, that we made the realization that we have been including the capital improvements plan in with the budget that is approved by council. So therefore, it doesn't not need to come before you. We put it on here as a receive and file for you today for your awareness. So for your awareness that, hey, this is kind of a, it's not really a change of doing business, the way we could have been doing business all along, so. But there was, I don't know, I think it was, I don't know how it got like that. I didn't have that experience from other communities, and so,
We never touched it for years.
yeah, so we're back to where we started from then. But for your awareness, within the CIP, within the budget, there is an addendum, which is the breakout of the bond projects. That'll be further refined once the CCTV for the cleaning and the televising of the citywide sewer system is complete. Those projects might get shuffled around based on any discovery that is had from those CCTV efforts. So, and there's $10 million set aside up front for any potential findings for that. So far, so decent. So, we're at roughly 25% so far through the city, and we should be picking up speed as far as we're in the northwest corner of town. It's kind of the most turns and congested as far as sewage runs are concerned, and they anticipate being able to get more clean and televised in the coming weeks. So because you have more longer and straighter runs throughout the rest of the city, so that should pick up to completion hopefully by August. So it's before you as a receive and file. You'll see on there most of the CIP stuff is in regards to equipment, vehicles acquisition, and in the addendum is all the projects. So, and those are the projects that were part of the pitch for the bond. And so we're going to continue, since we pitched them and we presented this way, we would like to continue tracking them in the same manner. So it's the same level of familiarity that residents bought in to support this bond initiative. So.
Good. You need any input from us?
If you want to receive and file it, you can.
I'll
If
make a
you-
motion to receive and file the proposed 2025 to 2030 capital improvement plan.
Second.
Motion and support. Any more conversation? May I have roll call, please?
Ms. Redmond,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Solomon,
Yes.
Mr. Tinlin,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzer,
Yes.
Mr. Hara,
Yes.
Mr. Casera.
Yes. Thank you. And do we have a planner's report tonight?
I don't have anything further.
I think we pretty much covered everything else there. How about staff report and training opportunities? Nick's not with us, but we do have a sheet in our,
Nick's not here, but he wanted me to request again that you complete the disclosure form that hasn't been done yet by some members. April 15th was the deadline. I think they're in front of you. Appreciate it. As far as code enforcement, police department, I can tell you that if a complaint comes into the police department, they can't enforce it, they send over what's called a call for service, or they'll write a report over to the code enforcement, and then they'll investigate it. So there's a mechanism in place. The chief's responsible for code enforcement, so if it's something that she sees or her designee sees that's supposed to be over to code enforcement, it goes over there, and that's how they investigate. If it's not called in, they don't investigate it, so.
but our code enforcement, will we have two officers? Barb
Yes,
and-
two
Barb and
officers.
some other fellow, and they only work? a couple
One
days
works Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday, Thursday, part-time.
Part-time, okay, yeah, that's part of the problem I think we have with some of the things going on.
And a lot of, it sounds like the parking stuff's police matters, okay? The parking on the grass, the sidewalk, that should be called into the police department, so.
Does code enforcement like actively patrol, or do they just respond?
Well, they'll go out and drive around the neighborhood to see stuff, but a lot of stuff's already backlogged. They're catching up on emails, they're not going out, or stuff that's designated by, Nick might come in from the businesses, so they'll go out there and investigate that, so. But yeah, well, they're out and about, they'll know stuff.
Yeah, it's basically what they see in residents complaining, you know. If they have a problem, they'll complain to it.
So, that's it.
Thank you.
Do you have something?
Yes, sir. Just for your awareness, The 25-26 budget does have within it the expansion to a full-time code enforcement officer and one part-time code enforcement officer,
Terrific.
for your awareness.
Thank you.
Does that mean weekends will be covered?
It's a good question.
And maybe Fridays?
That's a very good question. Seriously, I'll see what we can do about that.
Saturdays and Sundays when we need them?
Well, currently, it's a 3-day weekend all the time. So one question is, would they work weekends? The other question is, does the weekend include Friday? Yeah.
Coverage on all those days in some capacity needs to be addressed. I'll take that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have no legal update this evening. And does anyone have any comments to make before we adjourn this meeting?
I do, and Joe, I won't exhaust you much more than I already have. So I was just wondering, when we plan to start the talks on the master plan stuff, are we waiting for that the 35 days kind of thing to go through?
Yeah, the 63-day period ends soon, so we'll have that back before you for a public hearing soon.
Okay.
And then once we're through that, we'll get cracking on all the amendment work.
Because I remember, oh, sorry,
No,
go
I
ahead, Josh.
didn't mean to cut you off, but just to add to that, I know I asked Nick a couple of times to just keep in our packet until it's completed, because I think it's something that we just all need to be aware of what the dates are, and then also just for the public, they can
Sure.
reference it as well. So if we just keep in our packet until it's complete. that'd be
Well,
helpful.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, sorry, I cut you off.
No, you didn't. I was just curious, because I remember when we talked about it last, before sending it off, we kind of talked about, okay, everybody kind of write their list of things that they've
Yes,
got.
yeah.
So I thought there might be opportunity for some brainstorming, so at least when it comes back, we know what segments maybe does that make sense?
Yeah,
to do it?
yeah. And that is still something that we'll work on. I'm not sure exactly which May meeting the public hearings will be on. I believe it'll be the second one.
Okay.
Just looking at the time frames and everything. But it's possible that the first May meeting, we could maybe do something like that, and have a little preliminary discussion about what we want to tackle first.
Or like a workshop, I mean, maybe others don't have got a lot of things, and I don't want it to be all my stuff either, obviously, so I guess it's kind of, maybe we can plan to plan.
Yeah,
At least in May.
to me, a workshop where we're all sitting at around a table over there, and then maybe we have the regular meeting might be the productive way to do that. Because then we're not worried about other agenda items, because that's one of the things that we always have to keep in mind is, like, if we get 2 site plans in, well, that might be a whole meeting, so.
Brain fried by
So,
the end of
yeah,
that.
if we do it, we should probably do it in the form of a workshop prior to the meeting. That way we get it out of the way and we can attend to whatever business we need to attend to at the meeting.
Okay, cool.
Sounds good.
That was my only question.
Motion to adjourn then?
Nobody else? I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Motion support, roll call, please.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Solomon?
Yes.
Mr. Tinlin?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter? Yes. Mr. Fitzer?
Yes.
Mr. Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Casera?
Yes.
Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.